Okay, so this is question 6 to 10. Um, right, so here we have a scenario where we have been asked to calculate the weighted. So I mean that's the clue here, the weighted average number of shares. And so it's important to understand a couple of things. Of course, we don't expect you can have a business issue a number of shares over the year. As you can imagine, all those shares will not generate income. All the money that's come in will not generate the return in equal proportion. If you, as you can imagine, imagine you issued shares in November. Imagine your year end is December. You issued shares in November. The capital coming in here in November would not have played a major role in the generation of the income in terms of return on capital employed throughout the year. So if we really want to understand how much really to get that ratio right, that return on capital employed right, so to speak, we should really be using a weighted, if you like, a weighted average number of shares ultimately, right? That's where we should really be going. So what this does is to kind of manage that process. So what do we have here? So it says here that you have £2 million worth of or dollars worth of 50 cents shares. So in effect, right, I'm just going to draw a little timeline. You have 4 million shares, don't you? So 1st of January. So all we're doing is weighting them to make sure that we get the actual number of shares that generated the income over the period. So we have January all the way to, if you like, the end of April, which is the 1st of May. So that's 4 months. So if I'm doing a weight, in effect, I'm saying I had 4 million shares over 4 months out of 12. That's the first step. Then here on the 1st of May, I issue another 500,000 shares. So from now on, from the 1st of May, I will have 4.5 million shares, won't I? Because if you like, I have the existing 4 and times 8 over 12. Now, I'm writing this already. I should probably just highlight what's going on here. It says here that you made a bonus issue of 1 share for every 5 in issue. So in effect, if you have 1 share for every 5 in issue, we are, in effect, the assumption here is because this bonus issue covers the shares that happened in May and covers the shares that happened in January, they all, these 500 shares and this 4 million are part of that bonus, get that bonus issue. So in effect, we assume that this happens right from the beginning. I mean, no money comes in with a bonus issue, as you remember. So what I have to do, in effect, is include that bonus as though those bonus shares have been there from the beginning. So what does that mean? So for this lot of shares, in effect, I'm really saying 4 million times 4 over 12 times, if it's 1 for every 5, in effect, I now have 6 shares for every 5, right? So this is called a bonus factor, in effect, as you can imagine, right? I'm basically just divide all this by 5 and multiply by 6, or you can, however you want to do it, you can just find the extra number of shares. And I have all of this all the way till May, and then I have the 4.5 times 8 over 12 times 6 over 5. Now, I mean, this bonus, if there had been another market issue after the bonus issue, I would stop, if you like, right? Because you see, any market issue or rights issue, in effect, I would stop there because that wouldn't have taken effect at that point. And the bonus share, the bonus, imagine they had done another market issue here. The bonus issue would only affect the things that came before. That's the important thing. So because there is nothing after the bonus issue, I can apply it for the whole of the year. It can be 8 out of 12 months, right? The bonus issue really is not a real movement. It's just nothing really happened. No money came. So in effect, I could almost ignore it. In terms of the date, it's not an actual point in time to recognize. So what do? Multiply this 4 times 4 over 12. So let me just get my calculator and deal with that very quickly. 4, where are we? Here we are. All right. Get that very quickly. What do I have? 4 times 4 divided by 12 times 6 divided by 5 is 1.6 million. And then here we have 4.5 times 8 divided by 12 times 6 divided by 5, and that's 3.6. So this is 3.6 and 1.6 million, giving us 5.2 million, and this is D, right? That's D. Okay, great, that's that. Let's move on. Now, here we have question 7. This is a goodwill question. A goodwill question. So the question is really asking us here to look at impairment of goodwill. So let's look at this is almost like a working 3. If you like, if you think about your goodwill calculations, you must remember to taking the whole 100% of the consideration less the 100% of the fair value of what it is we're actually buying in effect. So what does that mean? What is this 100%? Well, you paid 75%. You paid, or the consideration is at a cost of 2 million. So that's your kind of investment, cost of the investment, 2 million. And then it says the non-controlling interest was recorded at the initial fair value of 500,000. So you have 500,000. So that's the 25%. So in effect, you have 2.5 million, right? Then it says that the fair value of the actual thing you're paying for. So this is what you paid. Assume because you are controlling it. So we assume there's 100% control. This 25% comes under your equity anyway because you control it. Fair value was 1.75, so that's the fair value of Sun's assets at 1.75, if you like, right? Which gives you goodwill right at the start of 0.75 million. So that's the goodwill at the start. It says during the first year, which would have been July X4 to June X5, which is here, you lost 20% in impairment. So that's for that year. So of course we basically take off 20% of this. So I could calculate 20% of this and then deduct it from this, or I could just argue, right, that 0.75 million, if I want to know what's left at the end of that first year in terms of the asset of goodwill, I would have 0.6 million. So that's the goodwill at the beginning of 2005, 1st of July. They're asking me, so they're telling us that at the end, another 10% has been lost for the following year. So 10% of this takes me to 60,000, and that's 7. Okay, great. So that's how that works. So again, good question for remembering how to deal with working 3. Cash flows, great question, because here it gets you to practice and see what's really taking place with cash flows, why cash flows are so important as a financial reporting statement. Here we have the events coming in from profits. We know, or when I say profits from trading, we know how much cash has come into the business. You spend quite a bit of money, if you like, investing in either non-current assets or investing in subsidiaries or associates, so we can see what's going on. Quite a bit of money has been spent, and then you have also raised new funding ultimately from here. So I can see, and then I can see this is what the cash was at the beginning of the year, and then that's what. So I can see some relatively healthy cash figures. So let's see. It says here, which of the following kind of would be a reasonable conclusion about what's happened here. QW is in decline as a significant cash outflow. I wouldn't. This is in investing, so to say it's in decline is false. We can see we're investing in new in new assets or new events. So this is wrong. QW has financed a high proportion of its investing by utilizing its operating cash. That does make a lot of sense. So we have the cash coming in here. You haven't financed from financing, because here we would have had any loans and any equity raise, any equity issues would have come in this section, but we don't see that. We see a lot of the money coming in through here at operating activities. So we can argue that this is true, but let's just look at the rest. It's made a profit in the year. We cannot know that because we need to kind of see the movement in itself. All we can tell is that this is the cash flow. We remember that we have profit from operations, and then we do all kinds of add backs to it. So we cannot know, because because we're adding all these things back, we cannot be sure that they have made a profit in the year. Different systems really based on the accrual system here with profit. And you must be facing so this is wrong. Facing a serious liquidity problem. No, that's not. This is serious liquidity problem. That's exaggerated, so that's not true. So ultimately, we know that's not true as well. So the answer here is B. That's your best answer. Okay, so that was 8. And then let's look at 9. So here, what do we have here? So we can see some ratios here. And let's look at the movement here. Inventory holding, that has increased quite significantly. from one year to the next. Receivables, so we're still chasing up our trade receivables quite well. Where we seem to have balanced on the same amount. We seem to have the same systems in place. No major changes there. So we can see really here the issue is inventory to a certain extent. Inventory. Payable days, we have also a big amount there. So in terms of, we have an increase there, a delay, if you like. We're taking much longer to pay. Um, and we can see definitely the fall in these ratios of current ratio and quick ratio. So let's see, it says which is not a valid statement. So the increase in inventory holding period is a significant concern. This is a fashion industry, so you've suddenly taken on all this inventory period is longer, as there's a high risk of obsolescence in the industry, and this is true, definitely. Um, this is 128 days for fashion. It's ridiculous. The deterioration in the ratios could simply be, let's, yes, the result. This is actually the answer, but let's look at the others first, and I'll come back to this. KL attempting to finance um, are attempting to finance their increase by delaying payment to suppliers. So you can see definitely this is increased. So this is a valid point. We can see definitely the delay in supply, in paying suppliers. The in payable days has increased. Significant increase in payables will have caused the cash position to worsen dramatically. Well, if you're delaying payment, well, by default, this means you should have more cash. So actually, it doesn't worsen by delaying payment. You are actually improving the cash position. So here, this is false. So let me come back here. The deterioration in the ratios could simply be the result of a significant purchase of goods being made on credit terms. So yeah, so if you think about what's going on here, you could have just bought a lot of goods, if you like, at the year end. So ultimately, this increases your, if you like, your inventory at year end. They haven't shifted just yet, and you've bought them on credit. So in effect, um, your credit days does look quite extended in terms of your payable payment period, as well as your inventory days, because you suddenly have all this inventory that that's just not shifted. But this might all be at the year end. So this is possible. This is possible as well. So D is is not a valid statement, because oops, D is not the um, D is the issue really there. Right. And then finally, question 10. Oh, I don't know how long I spent here. 12 minutes. Oh, that's not too bad. Question 10. Which of the following is not included in the definition of control? So control, a number of things here. Control is about power. Control is about having the right to decide how dividends are paid out, how investments are used, how profit is directed. It isn't really to do with having a majority of the shares. You can have 46%, 45%, and you could have other shareholders having 1% and 3% and 4%. You are in control. You decide, because you have the big block, and you'll probably have the highest number of people on the board, so you can decide. So basically, you are exposed to decide how those returns are managed, whether paid every month or paid every 6 months, what the dividend policy is. You have that power. So having power with the investee, having exposure, and having the ability to use that power, and not to do with majority of the shares. Cool, great stuff. Those are the next 5 questions.